Welcome back to our channel. We are going to start doing these videos weekly where we collect all of your questions throughout the week and we regurgitate them back to you, give you kind of a crash course on all things STR. So this is technically week 2. We hope you enjoy. Well, the most passive way is with us at Subaru Labs. This has been a huge topic of conversation in the STR space for a while as it was presented as passive income, and that's why a lot of people got into it. If anyone is a host, they know it's not passive at all. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to an Airbnb. For us, we wanted to see if there was a solution for it to become passive for investors. So what we created are 2 options. You've either got STR in a box, which means that you own the entire thing and we are putting it together for you and giving you a turnkey short-term rental, or you can invest with us as a collective in our diversified portfolio where you can own a small portion of several different properties across the US. Other than that, unless you're investing with other people, there is no real way to make it truly passive. Our most popular client that we work with is a long-term rental expert who is curious about the short-term rental space, and rightly so, because we make significantly more cash flow per month than a long-term rental landlord does. The biggest learning curve that the long-term rental experienced host goes through is learning that it's hospitality first, investing second. So when you have a long-term rental, it's a numbers game and you put into the renovation a minimum amount so that you can maximize your return. With short-term rentals, the more you put into it, the more you can get out of it. So when it comes to design, amenities, operations, furniture, things like that, you don't necessarily want to skimp like you would in a long-term rental, and that can be pulling teeth when working with people who are familiar with long-term rentals and transitioning into short-term rentals. That's such a common question that we get, and it varies person to person. My recommendation is, 1, to take a look at how flexible your current life is. If you are putting together an Airbnb yourself and you are not hiring someone like us to do it for you, it's going to require a lot of time and energy on the front end to set that property up. So if you don't have the flexibility to go live in another state or somewhere outside of where you live for an extended period of time, you're going to have to fork up a lot of money to have somebody else do it for you, or you really need to stick somewhere close to home and start close to you. On the backside, operationally, it's much more manageable to do from afar, but that front side lift is so heavy that even if you want something far away, if you can't afford the time to set it up, it's probably not your best bet, and I would probably say stick somewhere close. Yes. When you look at the entirety umbrella of short-term rentals, you've got everything from tiny homes, glamping, and even renting out your backyard for camping, all the way up to huge mansions that have every possible amenity that you could ever imagine. And there's a risk associated with all of those. For example, if you're looking at single-family homes, a lot of people will see that as a low-risk investment because there's so much flexibility with what you can do with that property outside of short-term rentals. But they don't cash flow as much as, say, a glamping experience would. Whereas with a glamping experience, it's going to be significantly harder to offload if you ever have to get rid of that property, and you're not gaining nearly as much equity as you are in a regular house, but you're cash flowing higher. So some people may look at that as a riskier investment, but it cash flows higher. So you have to assess your risk versus reward on every different short-term rental strategy. It can be intimidating to partner with other people on a short-term rental, specifically because you're making a huge investment with someone. It is, in a sense, another form of marriage. It's a huge commitment. With that being said, you can scale a lot faster if you do partner with other people because you can pull from other people's banks. You can pull from other people's income. So if you've got the process down and you're bringing a lot of sweat equity to the table, it's never necessarily a bad idea to partner with other people on projects because you will be able to scale faster. This is a battle that we fight internally at Subaru Labs all the time when dealing with investors' money. When we're dealing with other people's money, we rely heavily on AirDNA to project what we think we could get for any given property at any given time. With our own personal investments, we like to look at things that are maybe a bit riskier in markets that don't have nearly as much data available for you to look at how your property is going to compare to other properties. When we are looking at markets, we tend to try and reach out to people who are hyper local in that market already to pull some knowledge from them, or there's a huge learning curve for yourself. For example, I'm very bullish on Michigan, the Michigan market, because Emily and I were born and raised here. We understand the travel market in depth here because we grew up in it, but I wouldn't feel as confident taking that risk in a non-saturated market elsewhere because I don't understand it as well. So if I were to go into another market, let's say like Maine, for example, that's not an Arizona, not a Florida, not a Tennessee, I would want to find someone who has experience there to try and figure out what the gaps in my knowledge are going into it. But they can be extremely lucrative investments, maybe slightly more risky, but you don't have nearly as much competition. So you're kind of hitting it before everybody else does. Yes, a million times yes, and I'm not just saying that because we personally offer a course. Our course, and so far everyone else that I know that I'm affiliated with that has a course, they are all made up of giant mistakes that we all made by not taking a course on the front end. Truly, truly, you will save so much money on the back end if you reach out for education on the front end, because there are just so many moving parts with short-term rentals. There are so many mistakes that you can make, and so any way that you can avoid those mistakes on the front end, the more money you're going to save on the back end. If you're not willing to invest in yourself, then I wouldn't suggest investing in something like real estate that costs so much money up front anyway. Definitely do your education portion before you sink your teeth into this. Develop and rely on your community that's already in the space. We did this a lot. We did a lot of networking and we started designing for other people before we ever invested in our own properties, and that saved us a lot of heartache by being able to lean on people who had a lot more experience than us. We personally didn't take a course on the front end, and now looking back, I regret that decision. I wish we would have. It would have saved us a lot of time and money. But what we did do, and what I would highly recommend, is finding a mentor or finding a community, whether that's in a Facebook group, whether that's in a Discord or a Slack or a course or whatever else, and really starting to develop a community of support around you so that you can ride those waves as they come when you really hit a brick wall. One, not learning how to analyze a deal before they purchase it. We personally, within Superhost Labs, have run a ton of data on this and know that 94% of properties bring you a cash-on-cash return of less than 10%, which means that there is a ton of room for purchasing a bad property. Two, accounting for the amount of money you need saved up to compete in the market that you're in. A lot of times, long-term rental investors will come in with not nearly the money that they need to bring in to actually design and renovate the property properly to compete in any competitive market, and that ends up biting them in the butt in the long run. They put all this time and energy into it and don't reap the rewards that they deserve because they didn't put enough time and energy and money specifically into a property that's new. Third largest mistake is not prioritizing the hospitality front before the investment front. This is first and foremost a hospitality game, and so we see so many new hosts getting into this space expecting it to be a get-rich-quick investment, and it is not that. They will have a rude awakening if they are not prioritizing being a host. Yes and no. Outside the US scares me personally a little bit. I don't know that we will invest outside of the US for a couple of reasons. One, we saw what COVID did to the world, so not having access to the real estate that you own for an extended period of time personally makes me pretty nervous. Another factor is the language barrier that you will have with your team. So if you're investing in an area where you do not speak the language, then your cleaners, potentially your management, your handyman, there's always going to be that gap that will cause tension in your operations. And then also, I have yet to find another country that has as great of financing as the US has. For example, if you go to Mexico, you have to fund in cash 100% every investment that you make. In Canada, for example, it's 20% absolutely, no questions asked. There are no conventional loans, there are no second home loans, there are no investment loans. It's 20% every single time. And in the US, we have the advantage of much more favorable terms on loans for property. So personally, I don't think I would invest abroad, but you really can take Airbnb anywhere, and if it is a lifestyle play over an investment or finance play, then it might be a great deal. If you enjoyed these videos, please come back. We will be doing another 10 questions every single week. If you have a question that you want answered in one of these episodes, please drop them in our DMs on Instagram at the Carwells. We will compile the list as the week goes on and continue to answer them, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.